thank you so much for joining us today. Before we kick this off, I do want to point out to the audience that we welcome questions. Please utilize the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, type in questions as they come up, and we will address those at the conclusion of today's presentation. So I'd now like to turn this over to Stephen Saltzstein, Forest Family Office's CEO.
Thank you, Callie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be with us. You know, if you're at all familiar with what's going on with AI and data centers and how that ties into the need for energy and therefore the global race to produce electrons and power through any source, be it solar or wind or gas or whatever, you soon realize what RheEnergise is doing and why it is so amazing and such a brilliant solution. And here to tell you more, it's my great pleasure to welcome Stephen Crozier, CEO of RheEnergise. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Great first name, by the way. I'm joined here by two of my co-founders, Tamas Butani, who's our CTO, and Graham Cook. And I'm just going to go straight into it and share my screen. We've got a slide deck, probably take 15 minutes, maybe slightly longer, just to run through, and then we really welcome some questions. So thank you very much for joining us and for your time. Hello, I'm Stephen Crozier. I'm the CEO at RheEnergise, and we're developing a form of long-duration energy storage, which is low cost and highly scalable. Our patented solution is a form of gravitational energy storage based on pumped hydropower, only better. In fact, 2.5 times better due to our high-density working fluid. The market is huge, measured in trillions of dollars. Our solution meets the needs of this market and provides best-in-class economics. As a result, we experience phenomenal customer demand. Analysis from across the world shows that the opportunity for long-duration energy storage will be huge and grow exponentially. A market that must grow 50 times faster to meet the predicted need, and one that is estimated to be worth $4 trillion by 2040. There are not many market opportunities that are measured in trillions of dollars. The sheer scale of the predicted growth means that unicorn businesses must emerge in this sector, and RheEnergise has the potential to become a green unicorn within just a few years. The expansion of this market is being driven by multiple factors that are happening simultaneously across the world. The growth in data centers and crypto, the deployment of intermittent renewable energy, the increasing emphasis on system security, demographic change, and the increasing pace of industrial electrification. Our product fits the market need, a solution designed for the part of the market where the energy traded volumes are the greatest. Our pipeline for just the top 28 deals is over $600 million across multiple jurisdictions, all of which are facing huge demand growth and system reliability challenges. We have MOUs signed with various key industry sectors across multiple territories from Australia to Chile and Europe to North America. Projects are typically up to 100 megawatts, although there are inquiries for projects up to 500 megawatts of scale. We are tracking 160 deals across 30 countries. We need to grow our team to be able to haul in these opportunities. HD Hydro is a solution that is highly scalable. In every country we look, there are more than enough sites to solve the challenges in front of us. The huge growth in energy demand and the intermittency of renewable generation. There are enough sites to solve these problems many times over. Taking the UK as an example, 300 out of the 6,500 sites would provide 150 gigawatt hours of storage, which is more than 25% of the UK's predicted needs. This is achievable in just 15 years. The same acceleration of growth is repeatable in most countries and most states in North America. As we look across North America, we see that the states with the highest energy demand also have ample sites for HD Hydro. Project location availability is measured in thousands, if not tens of thousands of sites in most states. This is before we count opportunities at mine locations. HD Hydro is a closed system, which means we are a solution that will operate successfully even in dry, arid places, like much of the southern United States, Texas, New Mexico, California. Sites can be found close to generation, close to demand, or in between. High-density hydro compares very favourably with alternative energy storage solutions. At 8 hours duration, we are half the cost of lithium-ion batteries, far below hydrogen, flow batteries and compressed air. We also avoid the water abstraction, time to build problems and the social issues associated with traditional pumped hydro. This example uses a $50 energy purchase price. A $0 purchase price would also reduce the levelized cost by about $50. Looking at Texas in more detail, it is predicted that energy demand will grow by 70% to a huge 145 megawatts, primarily due to data centers and industrial growth. Similar predictions can be found across North America, Europe, Australia, and elsewhere. Behind solar, energy storage is the fastest growing part of the energy market. We are offering an opportunity to grasp a substantial piece of this action. To provide insights into what is achievable, we have developed a case study for a 180 megawatt data center in Texas without any incentives included. We find internal rates of returns of over 17% and payback periods under 6 years. The capex in this study for the solar plus high-density hydro is a combined $960 million. HD Hydro has also emerged immune from the impacts of the Big Beautiful Bill. We are still eligible for all support until 2033. To obtain the results shown, we have simplified a typical data center power usage and optimized the model to achieve the best internal rate of return. The 4 graphs at the bottom illustrate how the optimization plays out in June, September, December, and March. Charging can be from the solar array or from the grid. We have the detail available on how the case study was developed. However, rather than diving into the numbers in depth, I would like to hand over to Tamas to talk through our technology and our IP.
Thank you, Stephen. So yeah, let's talk technology. So as Stephen has already introduced, the fundamental problem we're trying to solve here is to create a long duration energy storage technology that can be deployed in very large numbers, quickly and globally. That super exciting market opportunity, the $4 trillion figure, somewhat ironically, it actually speaks to the size, the scale of the challenge that faces long duration energy storage and the energy transition. So the story I like to tell is to sort of say, if we take all of the energy storage we've ever built around the world in the last 100 years, and we add all of the energy storage that is currently under construction, and we add all of the energy storage that is even planned to be constructed, it still only achieves something like 2% of all of the energy storage that is required to meet the 2040 goals. And 2040, it's not far away. It's actually 14 and a half years away. So tick-tock, time is of the essence. So that's the scale, the enormity. And this is a huge problem because if we don't deploy that other 98% of energy storage, then we can't build the wind farms and the solar panels that are required to decarbonize our energy systems around the world and to mitigate the biggest impacts of climate change. So that's what we set about to solve. How do we create a very scalable long-duration energy storage technology? And we started, as Stephen said, with one of the best solutions out there, which is conventional water-based pumped storage. However, because there is a however, conventional pumped hydro is not scalable. Why? Because it has very specific site requirements. There's just not a lot of places where we can build it anymore. It's kind of like a Goldilocks on steroids. It needs a mountain, it needs a river, it needs alpine valleys. So our innovation was to free the concept from these constraints. The first thing we did was it's a closed loop system. So we did away with the need for an upper valley and so on. We build our own reservoirs. But the most clever thing we did, the innovation we really did was to switch the working fluid from water to our proprietary patented high density fluid. So this is not just a little bit better. It's not like one of those, like it's 10% better or 15% better. It's 2.5 times, 2.5x, 250%. It's a huge difference. It's transformational. It's disruptive. It shifts the paradigm, because ultimately what it means is high density hydro can be installed on small hills and not mountains. And as you've already seen from Stephen's slides, it works in as much as there are more than enough sites to meet the needs of the energy transition many, many, many times over. So a huge check mark for being scalable. So how does it work? Next slide, please, Stephen. It's similar to conventional pumped hydro, in as much as when there is an abundance of clean energy, we pump our high density fluid up the hill. And then when there's an increase in demand, the clouds come in or the wind stops blowing, we let that fluid drain through the turbines and regenerate electricity onto the grid. Effectively, we're storing energy in the form of gravitational potential energy. Next slide, please, Stephen. So yeah, let's talk about our secret sauce, which is kind of a joke because our high density fluid looks like a sauce, and that's definitely a dad joke, but I thought it was funny. So high density fluid, what we do is we suspend a dense mineral or a number of dense minerals in water. And that sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But trust me, there's a lot of science and engineering that goes into that. So what we've achieved, again, is a very high density, so 2.5 times that of water. As Stephen likes to point out, if you had a vat of high density fluid in front of you, you could take a concrete block and put it in it and it would float, because that's how dense the high density fluid is. At the same time, it needs to be very low viscosity, and that's how we achieve high efficiency. It needs to be very stable. And we're very mindful of the fact that people are comparing us and benchmarking us against water. So it needs to be non-toxic and non-reactive. And we've actually had that independently tested by UK labs. And for those of us like me, who thinks always in terms of techno-economics, it needs to be very low cost. And that's exactly where a lot of our focus and engineering work is to deliver this fluid at a minimum cost. And along the bottom, you see a little bit of the history of the fluid being developed in the chemistry lab and then in our test rigs. But that last photo on the right, that's something different. That's just from a few weeks ago. It's you probably can't tell from the picture, but it's part of our industrial process that is now mixing fluid at scale. That's 45 cubic meters. So in American units, that's what, 15,000 gallons roughly of high density fluid per day on this industrial process. And that really is the biggest highlight. Next slide, please, Stephen. This is our crowning achievement to date, just to date, more to come, but this is our crowning achievement to date. It's our demonstration project that we've built in the southwest of the United Kingdom. It's a demonstration project in as much as it's 500 kilowatts. So 500 as opposed to 5,000, which is what a commercial project will be. But in every other regard, it has all of the components and systems and functions of a commercial project. It's the conclusion of a lot of the work we've done to date. And one of the things I never sort of shy away from bragging about is it's really a testament to our amazing team. So the ability for a team to execute and deliver is critical in a startup, and this project speaks for itself. Next slide, please, Stephen. These are just some pictures of the project being built over the last 6 to 12 months. We do accept tours, so we give tours to people. So if you're interested, do let us know. It's in the southwest of England. Some really cool stuff there. Next slide, please. The demonstrator didn't come out of a vacuum. We've been hard at work behind the scenes. So I'm based in Montreal with the R&D team. We have 20 amazing people, engineers, scientists, technicians, a 15,000 square foot facility, dedicated labs, test rigs, and so forth. We've systematically worked through the fundamental scientific questions and then moved on to the engineering development work. And that's really culminated in that demonstration project. Next slide, please. And I think it's also backed up by our pretty impressive IP portfolio. So we have 12 patent families, 3 patents already granted, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Really, we're constrained by bandwidth and money at the moment. We could actually, there's no limit to the amount of foreseeable limit to the amount of innovation and patents we could be filing. So thus far, I've focused very much on the fluid, and that is core, but actually, what are our strategies is to build on the existing hydro industry. And so what we do is we've been taking existing hydro solutions, and wherever the fluid touches it, we adapt the design to meet the fluid and our specific application. And that's great for 2 reasons. One, it's a very fast way to progress your technology, right? Standing on the shoulder of giants. And two, it creates an enormous wealth of patent and protectable IP. So we're building up a really strong moat. So that's enough on technology. Let's to give you a little insight into the financial aspects of our opportunity. I'm going to hand it over to Graham, our CFO.
Thanks, Thomas. I don't think we actually said at the top. So Stephen's the CEO, Tamas is the CTO, and I'm the CFO. So we're the three co-founders of the business. So probably worth saying that. Hello, everyone. So yeah, it's a good topic for me. How do we make money? CFO is always interested in this sort of thing. So who are our customers, first of all? They're renewable energy developers, energy utilities, and also industrial and commercial heavy energy users. So it could be data center, it could be a steel plant, it could be a cement maker who has a lot of power to deploy to do their business. And how do we actually engage as a business? Well, we're a solution provider. What we do is we make the project happen from start to finish. So we make our money from four different places. Two sets in the formation of the project, and two sets once the project is operational. So first of all, consultancy. During the development process, we make sure that the project is designed and executed correctly. And that's a one-off, although it's spread over the first 18 months or so of the project. Once that part is done, we're into the supply part of the work, the technology supply number two there. And that is the second 18 months of the project. And that's the core high density hydro components that are going principally into the powerhouse. But they're not being provided by us, they're being provided by third-party suppliers. But we are working very closely with them to get the design right and to specification and to bring the whole thing together. That's a further one-off, and that's the second 18 months, as I said. And then once we're operational, there are two further revenue streams. There's the operations and maintenance, which is to keep the project running as it should, and keep it on track. That's over the whole operational life of a project, which is 50 years plus. So these are really long-term green infrastructure. And then last but not least is operational royalties, and that is also during the whole life of the project. Next slide, please, Stephen. So what we're looking at here is our timeline. So we have our demonstrator project at the top there. LDES is the long duration energy storage, is our acronym for that. And it shows how we move from our scale demonstrator into our first commercial projects. There's more acronyms there, I just noticed. So there's FOAK, SOAK, and TOAK. FOAK is first of a kind. So that means first of a kind commercial project. SOAK is second of a kind, and TOAK is third of a kind. The reason that we focus heavily on those is because that's our job number one, is to put RheEnergise into the world commercially. So we've done it at the scale demonstrator stage. It's an impressive project, but really we're not an academic institution, we're a business. So we need to put RheEnergise into the world commercially. So when does this happen? The first of a kind. We will commence revenues from the first quarter of 2026, and to go to the previous explanation, we'll have the consulting. First of all, we'll make around $1.5 million from that first project in consulting terms. We'll make around $3 million from the system provider fees, and then a further 700,000 or thereabouts on the operations and maintenance and royalties for every year of operation from there on in. So for the next 50 years following that. And then a similar pattern occurs on the second and third of a kind, but each succeeding project gets larger. So the second project, in contrast to the first, will be about twice as large, with around 200 megawatt hours, and the third project around 400 megawatt hours. To put that into context, a 200 megawatt hour project, that's sufficient to back up the electricity needs of the town I live in England, which has a population of around 20,000. So that's a pretty sizable project. From that second project, we'd have consulting revenues of around $3 million, system provider fees of $6 million, and operational revenues, once operational, of $1.5 million from and timing on that, we would start that project at the beginning of 2027, and we'd be operational from 2030. But we would have those revenues in the intervening period from the consulting and the system provider fees. And then the third of a kind project is twice as large again, and we'd start that from the fourth quarter of 2028. Thank you, Stephen. Next slide. This is our team, senior management team. We've already introduced you to the founder team. Just to say one more word on that, we're all serial entrepreneurs. We have done a lot of previous businesses, including in the clean tech arena. We have an excellent chair of our board who is even more experienced than us and has delivered very large scale renewable energy projects across Europe. Very excitingly, we are about to formalize a non-executive director who comes with a very significant industrial renewables background. Thanks, Stephen. Next slide. So importantly, sales and profits, funding and exit. We've done very well to date. We've raised $25 million. 70% of that has been non-dilutive, so from government sources. We're now raising at this time up to $15 million. And what do we plan to achieve? Well, in less than 10 years, we'll have sales of more than $1 billion per annum, profits of more than $500 million per annum, and that's really that's just the beginning. So that's around about 2034 on our plans. We hit those numbers. By the end of the 2030s, we plan to be at around $10 billion on the sales line. And the other way to think about this is we have huge headroom to grow further, given the size of the market. So even when we get to that 10 billion level, that's around about 3% of the available market here. So there's plenty of room to grow. And the plan is that we will be at the point where, if that is the choice of the shareholders and the directors, that we could have a sale or an IPO within 5 to 7 years, and that would return a very large capital multiple on these plans. Next slide, please, Stephen. So to summarize what we've been saying here, why invest now? Well, we have a brilliant innovation and team. They're very smart. We've got the patents to prove them and multiple PhDs as well to back that up. We have best-in-class technology and economics. Our technology is superior, and we have excellent economics to go along with that. So this is not an academic exercise. This is a business exercise. We have a large-scale demonstrator project which we have built. So that's really significant because we are at the point of de-risking the technical risks attached to this innovation. We have great financials, as I just said on the previous slide, sale or IPO within 5 to 7 years. And the dual mission really that we have is that this is one of the solutions to climate change. So this is going to be a very successful business, but we're also going to move the dial on climate mitigation. And I think that's a great point to end. Say thank you and welcome questions.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm going to have you stop sharing your screen, and we're going to go into the questions and make sure everyone's unmuted. So does this solve the problem of distance, meaning most wind power is generated in areas far away from population centers?
I'll take that one. Yeah, very much so. So one of the challenges with energy storage is where do you locate it? And the best place to locate it is either close to generation, so next to the wind farm or the solar farm, or close to demand. So a solution like ours, you can locate it next to the generation, and that means you've significantly reduced the losses in the transmission, or you can locate it close to demand. From a technology solution, we're entirely agnostic to that. The key thing we need is the vertical elevation change, and if the wind or the solar farm is on flat land, what we typically find is that there's actually hills relatively close, and installing sort of power lines over a few miles is not actually very expensive. Tamas, anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to emphasize that this is part of that paradigm shift I mentioned, right? It's precisely because we have a scalable technology, we can build smaller projects. Because you can build smaller projects, you can build them in larger numbers, and developers, huge value add. They can put these projects where it makes most sense, right? So not on that place of natural beauty far away in a park somewhere where there's a mountain, but actually, as Stephen said, where you need it. And that actually increases the value proposition of the project itself. So yes, good question, because it's a huge value add for us.
And kind of on the heels of that, how much of an elevation change and over what distance do you need to actually optimize the energy production?
Tamas, you take that one.
Sure. So our current sweet spot is around 150 meters, give or take. Oh, I should have had that ready in feet. I'm not good at meters to feet. That's a hard one, Stephen.
That's
150.
Yeah, there you go. So that's a sweet spot, because that's where you still have a good elevation, but there's a lot of sites at that range. So 150 meters, and then I think part of the question was also the lay of the land. Is that part of it, Callie?
Yeah.
So there's we obviously, there's a sweet spot where if it's steep enough, you need to build less penstock, and the longer it is, the more shallow the slope, the more penstock you have to build. So it does impact the economics. But there's a lot of sites. That was the point of Stephen's slide, saying there's more than enough sites to meet the energy transition many times over.
And just adding a little bit on Tamas's point on the elevation. So the sweet spot, 150 meters, but the envelope is both higher and lower. So we're not constrained to that single elevation. 450 feet, it can, we talk about an envelope of 100 meters, so 300 feet up to 900 meters, 300 meters, 900 feet. So I'm doing the calculations as I'm talking, so it's a bad thing. So that's much more of the envelope that we're looking at. So still hills, not mountains.
And how much of a problem is securing the land to build the facility? And have you spoken with any Native American tribes to utilize this on their reservations?
So I'll talk to the first bit, and then Tamas, maybe you talk to that second bit of that question. So what we find is that landowners are desperate to diversify their revenue, particularly when they have low value land, which is not very useful. So typically a hillside, certainly in the UK and Europe, you can't use it for very much. You can't grow crops on it. And so the value of that land tends to be quite low. Landowners are looking for diversification of income, and we find them very receptive. My background has been and Tamas's has been in wind development, and renewables by the landowners are seen as a big advantage in that diversification of revenues. And we expect the same thing with our projects. Tamas, on the Native American part.
Sure. I will just quickly add as well that a lot of the early traction we is in brownfield sites, and specifically open pit mines. In fact, our demonstration project I was showing you is built on an open pit mine, and so that really accelerates that sort of use of land process. In terms of the question of indigenous lands, it's actually not something we've yet had to engage with, but it raises that interesting point. We work a lot with developers who are ultimately our customers. So we work with local developers, and that's a deliberate thing, by the way. We sized our projects to fit in the developer's headspace in terms of dollars and in terms of time frame. 3 years to build a project, that's something a wind or solar developer can relate to, right? So they're the ones typically who have these relationships, and that is also a big value add for them, is to be able to deploy our technology on the land that they are then able to work with.
And then who does the construction of the facilities? Is that your responsibility?
I'm sure Tamas would like to add to this, but I'll start off. So the way we approach projects is to facilitate the project. So our customers are very much the developer of the project. Our customers wish to own energy infrastructure assets, and they're very capable at doing the development activities, securing land, securing grid. That's their skill set. And then they're also very capable of either being the EPC to build the project or employing the EPCs to build the project. So that's our customers' sort of roles and responsibility, and ultimately they'll own the energy asset. What we do is during the development phase of a project, we're providing the consultancy services which Graham was talking about to make sure that they understand the unique differences around our solution compared to hydropower solutions or other forms of renewable energy. So we're asking for some consultancy fees, and we give them best practice manuals, etc., on how to do things. We undertake some of the specific design tasks which are bespoke to us, and then during the construction phase, we would expect that our customers are either doing the construction themselves or organizing it themselves, but we'd give them the overall sort of parameters that we need to fit into, so that when we come along with the powerhouse components, they provided the shell for us to come in and put those in, and then we're intrinsically involved with that process of commissioning, finalizing, practical completion of a project, and then over into operational phase. Tamas, I'm sure you wish to add to that.
You know what, I'm going to come at it, Stephen, from the 40,000-foot view, and going back to this point that it's the challenge here fundamentally is providing a scalable solution. And if what we want to achieve is hundreds of projects rolled out around the world a year, then the right way about doing that is not by us vertically integrating the entire process. It's not by us becoming experts at doing the civils engineering, right? It's by leveraging the existing global knowledge base, existing hydro and existing construction industries out there. So very much by definition, we focus on what we're good at, which is the powerhouse, the turbine, the power conversion system, and so on, and of course the fluid. And everything else in the system, it's, as Stephen is saying, is really depending, or we are counting on the fact that our clients, our customers, will have these EPCs to actually roll that out. Good point. I'm going to bring up a point that we don't have in our slide deck, which I think is very material. There's something unique about HD Hydro, pumped hydro in general, but HD Hydro specifically. Almost 50% of the total project cost is spent locally, like locally. It's construction, it's consultants, it's contractors, it's people digging holes and laying pipes, and anyone can do that. And that's a huge plus. That's really big in terms of not just development in terms of ESG goals, but also local economic development. And that speaks to this point that is a local enterprise. And it differs by jurisdictions as well. So for all of those reasons, no, we don't do the construction ourselves. We work with the clients' engineers.
And what is the typical cost of an installation of your system, and how does that compare to other renewable options?
Graham, do you want to take the cost question?
Yeah, I'll answer that in a couple of ways. Actually, we're at the stage now, our development, where we have a cost, but we know that will get cheaper over time. So we would tend to quote $250,000 per megawatt hour installed. So when those numbers I was citing previously on the financials, that's really the numbers we're dealing in. In terms of the comparators, the closest comparison to us really is a traditional pumped hydro system. They'd be in approximately the same numbers. If you compare this to battery storage, you're not really comparing like with like. I don't actually have those numbers exactly to hand. Stephen, would you have a good sort of rule of thumb on a battery project if you were looking at, say, a 200 megawatt hour project?
No, it varies quite a lot by market, and so not a sort of a rule of thumb, but usually different technologies are compared on what is typically called a levelized cost of generation or energy. If you're a generation technology such as wind or solar or hydropower or wave power, or even a gas plant, that's the sort of the levelized cost of energy storage. We're not a generator, so we're not directly comparable to solar or wind or those type of projects. We're an energy storage solution. So we're more comparable to flow batteries or a compressed air solution, or even lithium-ion batteries. And one of the slides early in the deck sort of talked to that particular metric. And we very much see ourselves in a solution for the volume part of the market. So this is the day in, day out trading energy. So this is the arbitrage bit of the market. So if you're in a grid dominated by solar, you would expect that the cycling of a project would be every day. You would do a full cycle of the project. You would capture low cost energy during the day and return it in the evenings, some overnight, and then again in the mornings. And that's the sort of the arbitrage use case, which is the volume part of the market, which we're targeting. So this is really 8 hours of storage, maybe through to 16. So that's our part of the market. What you find in on a grid dominated by wind, that the duration of the energy storage is longer, maybe up to 16 hours, but you're cycling it less frequently. And that is because the cycle of the wind is roughly twice a week instead of daily. And then in terms of the levelized cost of storage at that duration that we're talking about, the arbitrage use case, the 8 hour plus duration, where on a levelized cost of storage basis, we're half the cost of lithium-ion batteries at today's prices, and even better against other solutions.
Thank you. And do you provide the turbine or resell one?
Tamas, do you do that?
Yes, I do. So we design our own turbine. We do all of our own powerhouse design. So what we've done, I touched on this briefly on the patent slide. We had to take everything that is touched by the fluid and assess it from an engineering perspective and say, how do we need to modify this to work with the fluid or our application? And what you see is that our turbine is a textbook case of this. To all intents and purposes, it looks like just about any other hydro turbine out there. Until you get into it and you realize there's a few things that are different. The hydraulic design, the shape of it has been adjusted to work with our high density fluid, and one or two mechanical details have been changed to work with the behavior of our fluid in our specific application. And there's patents behind that. But it's testament to this idea that it is effectively still building on the shoulder of giants, right? That when we took that design, we just took it to one of the, we tendered it to a number of industry standard turbine manufacturers, and they all looked at it and said, yeah, no problem, I can build this. It's kind of like everything else I've done. So it's manufactured for us by a third-party manufacturer. Now, that's the current story. That's the current demonstration project, and for the next foreseeable future. Long term, we have this vision really of licensing that IP to the existing turbine manufacturers. So that's the real way to scale globally, is saying, look, here's how you do it. Give us a few bucks. You build it your own. You have your own customers, your own supply chains, your own, everything. So you manufacture these turbines. We'll brand them like, works with HT Hydro, something like that. And that's the long-term goal, but that's still a few years away. So in the intervening years, we're really definitely doing our own design and having it manufactured by a contract manufacturer.
And on that point, when you're looking at a HT hydro turbine, one of the first things you realize, and it's true for the whole system, is that for any given elevation, everything is 60% smaller. The storage reservoirs are 60% smaller, the pipes are 60% smaller, the turbo machinery is 60% smaller. The electronics is not, but anything that is related to fluid, everything gets volumetrically smaller. And from a cost perspective, that's fantastic. You have across all of those systems, smaller things will cost less to make, and less material in them. We still do have, even though it's 60% smaller, the forces are still the same as it would be for water. So it's not quite so straightforward.
The other, thank you, Stephen. I've got one more add on there, Kelly, if you don't mind, which is that our innovation is patent protected, and it's genius, but it's also an incremental innovation. So the supply chain, the industrial base for hydropower is extremely well established in the world. It's a 100-year-old industry, and we're building on that. I think Tamas used the great line, standing on the shoulders of giants. That's what we're doing here, and it's particularly well established in Western Europe and in North America. So we're in exactly the right places for it.
And how many projects can you handle at a given time, or right now? And how does the company need to change to take advantage of all of the opportunities that you identified?
I would say that there are different stages of a project cycle, and our team is set up currently probably in terms of the sort of delivery of a project. Even if we're working with a sort of established developer, it's probably about one at a time at the moment. On the commercial side, in those early inquiries and building a pipeline of projects, we can handle more than one at a time. Hence the sort of size of the pipeline that we've been able to build. But the key challenge we face is we recognise that our team is not big enough to deliver our ambition. It needs to grow commercially and technically and financially and operationally. So we're currently 31 people. We to deliver our ambition, we do need to grow the teams across the board to deliver the number of projects which are clearly achievable in front of us.
And do you have any contracts to build facilities beyond your demonstrator plan?
Not currently, and also probably not surprisingly. Most customers are very keen to see the operation of the demonstration project, and we're in the process of switching that on at the moment. So what we really expect is that these early conversations with customers will really start to mature in the second half of this year, that we will start to see probably the first activity we think we'll start to see is their willingness to commit to development activities where they're spending their own money to hunt out sites, put them through the consenting process, to apply for grid connections. We would see that our customers will begin to do those activities in the second half of this year, the beginning of the following year, which also helps to make our pipeline much more real when they start spending money. And during that process, we will start to have early revenues as we undertake the consultancy activities for those customers.
And then who are your expected ideal customers? Is it municipalities, large corporations, with energy needs like data centers, and anyone else?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because the answer is, everyone who needs lots of energy is potentially our customer. But we like to frame it in the sense of companies who wish to own energy infrastructure. So their business is to own and operate energy infrastructure. That might be a solar farm, but it also might have been a coal plant or a gas peaking plant or anything that they own energy infrastructure. So they're our customers. And so when we talk about data centers, there are lots of companies around the world who provide the data center infrastructure for the operators like Amazon or Meta or whoever else. So those are our customers. They're providing the infrastructure, the data center. They build the shed, they put the air conditioning in, and they also provide the power solution. And so those are our customers in the data center case. In an alternative industry like mining, we would see more often than not, the mine is likely to sign a power purchase agreement with a third party who is providing them with the third party will pay for the wind and the solar and the energy storage solutions, and they'll contract as the off taker for it. So we see that our customers are the intermediary between us and the end energy user is the most likely one. But again, it could be vertically integrated utilities. And we talk to many, particularly in Europe, but also elsewhere. And so again, they're our customers, but they probably have a slower cycle in terms of project development. They're probably a little bit further away. They take longer to make the decisions than developers who wish to develop energy infrastructure for data centers, who want it commissioned in 2 years' time, which is what we want to.
And how do your all-in costs on a per kilowatt basis compare with a conventional hydro storage system? And how many have been built strictly for energy solution in North America?
So to date, we haven't built any commercial projects. That's the next phase of our journey. So we are building this demonstration project in the UK, or have just built this demonstration project in the UK. The next stage of our journey is very much the commercial first, second, third of the kind projects. I feel like I've not answered all of that question. Sorry.
Your all-in costs compared with that of a conventional hydro storage systems?
I'll take that. That's a bit of an echo of one of the slides, which is the one that looks at the levelized cost of energy storage, which is the standardized way to look at this question. And in terms of pumped hydropower, we are in very nearly the same numbers as them. We expect to probably outperform them over the long term as we get into the learning curves. Tamas may have something just wants to add in terms of any nuance around that, but essentially the same. Tamas, give you the opportunity.
Oh, it's okay.
And there's a question in here about the fluid. So what is added to your fluid to make it high density?
Shall I give a little answer there? We talk quite a bit about this openly, as we don't put in our published material on the web, but we're quite happy to talk about it. What we do is we take very dense minerals, so heavy minerals. We preferentially select those minerals that weigh quite a lot. We grind them up, and this is harder than it sounds because we need to get a very specific particle size distribution, and we add them to water. And then we add in very, very small amounts, percentage-wise, very tiny amounts of additives, which are just organic materials. It sounds very simple, but it takes years and years of R&D to get the right fluid, fundamentally because we're really pushing, on one end, we're really pushing the high density. That's way up there, that 2.5x. But at the same time, we have those other requirements I listed in terms of low viscosity, low cost, stability, and environmentally benign. Now, you notice I said the word minerals. That's because as part of our work to really understand how to minimize the cost of the high density fluid, one of the things we've realized is that we need to be very opportunistic about finding these sources of what we more generally call weighting agents, which are these minerals. So in fact, our technology around the fluid is not a specific formula for a specific fluid, but rather a platform technology. It's the ability to take any number of suitable weighting agents and create a high density fluid out of it. And the reason we do that is because we find regional supply chains for projects. So we identify regionally places where we can find sufficient quantities of weighting agents, so minerals, at the optimal price. And that will vary jurisdictionally, so between countries and between continents and so on. So it's a range of minerals we can use. I can just sort of add as well that no, maybe I'll stop it there unless people have more specific questions. I can go on all day about technology, by the way.
So how long does it take to install a system? Are there environmental concerns? And second question on that, does this make sense for the oil and gas industry as well?
I'll talk to the beginning bit, and you can take over on environmental concerns, Tamas, if that suits you. Our target for a system is to be able to get the consents that you need for a project in around 15 months. We think that you could do a small project in a good location in about 9 months, but the target is 12 to 15 months to do the consenting process. So you're at a point where you're FID, you make the decision to then progress to the build phase. And then the build phase, we're confident that 15 to 18 months of build period for a project is what is achievable. On this project, the demonstration project, that's the sort of timescale, and it was our first one. It's relatively small, but as we scale, there's a lot of learning around that, and we're confident of those sorts of timescales are deliverable.
On the environmental side of things, you saw, and we all touched on the fact that fluid is environmentally benign. key portion, and that just reflection of the fact that we've designed this front and center in our minds. These quick deployment cycles mean you need to be easy to get permitting for. Stephen's always proud of the fact that we went through planning permission in the UK on 2 different sites in a relatively short period of time. You'll also have seen in our pictures, we made a system that can be pretty much buried underground, the pipes and the reservoirs, so minimal visual impact. One of the things that's specific to the US market is, so conventional pumped hydro is under the domain of FERC, and you need to get a FERC permit to develop a conventional pumped hydro because of your use of water. And the queue at the moment is 7 years just to be considered. There's an exemption to FERC, which is if you're under 40 megawatts. And that's a big reason why we like these smaller, more agile projects, because as they fit underneath that threshold, we're exempt from having to get a FERC permit, much faster permitting time.
One of the key challenges about hydropower and pumped hydropower is the water abstraction. So the interference with rivers and with lakes in particular, that is where the environmental permitting time really extends, or the surveys you have to do of rivers. And we just avoid that entirely. If you've got a river on one side of a hill, we can go on the other side. It really doesn't matter to us, and that is the key constraint around hydropower and pumped hydropower, is the water, how you interfere with existing water, and we just eliminate that as a problem.
And what about the having it make sense for the oil and gas industries?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that the oil and gas industry are rapidly decarbonizing their operations by the use of solar power in particular. So if you go to the Bakken in Texas, or that they're part of the industrial electrification is the oil and gas industry. So they're seeing that by installing particularly solar power, they're already driving down their costs of operation, and it will be no different with an energy storage solution as well. And we actually see that the oil and gas industry, fundamentally they're an energy industry, and that we've had quite a lot of engagement with many, certainly the European sort of side of the oil and gas industry, and they like our solution. They like it. They see it as an alternative. That they see it as a way to be transition, to be involved in other parts of the market that they're not currently involved in. We tend to get incredibly positive feedback.
Great. Well, we are running out of time, and we do not have time for all of the questions. So for the audience, everyone out there has my email address. Please send me an email. I can put you in touch with the team here. They can dive deeper into some of the questions that you have. In turn, the team here will have all of your information, and we'll be, reaching out as well. Stephen, I'm going to turn it back. Stephen Crosher, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any final words before we close out.
I don't have any final words. I've just copied all the questions that we didn't answer. So Callie, I will, or we will have a quick look at those and answer those quickly. But what I'd really like to say is, Callie and Stephen from Force, thank you very much for hosting and organising this, and thank you everyone who's joined for your time and for listening to us. And I hope that you're interested in what we have to say. Tamas, Graham, do you have any final closing remarks?
Just to thank you from me, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. And I third that. Great to meet you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And everyone have a great day. Thank you.